Hi, it's the Mike Rogers Show. Mike Rogers here with you. And today I have a very special guests. I have Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi. Mariel Hemingway is an American actress. She began acting at age 14 and a Golden Globe nominated breakout role in Lipstick in 1976. And she received Academy and BAFTA Award nominations for her performance in Woody Allen's Manhattan. I also have Melissa Yamaguchi, who is Mariel's manager, best friend, and co-host of the podcast, Out Comes the Sun. Won't you welcome with me Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi.
Yay, thank you.
So, first off, can you start off with introducing yourself for us? How about you, Mariel?
Sure. Well, yes. Hi, I'm Mariel Hemingway. But you sort of did a good version of me. But yeah, I've been an actress since I was 13 years old. I'm a lot older than that now, maybe 50, not quite 50 years, but anyway.
You don't have to tell us that.
That's all right. I don't mind. I'm actually proud that I've made it this far, and I feel as good as I do. And I have a good life, and I think, lifestyle choices are a big part of that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you mentioned that I have a foundation, which Melissa and I started. It's called the Mariel Hemingway Foundation, which is it's a resource navigator for people looking for resources and ways to overcome mental health issues. So, and the reason I wanted to start that is because I come from an incredibly creative family, but a family who suffered from a lot of addiction and, depression and anxiety and different mental health issues. And so I've always been very passionate about finding solutions for people, because there's not, one size fits all for everyone. So anyway, that's why we started the foundation. We're very passionate about, just helping people who feel like they're isolated or alone. And we're here to tell you you're not.
That's really nice. And how about you, Melissa?
Well, I had the good fortune of meeting Mariel. Gosh, I don't even, now I'm losing track of time. It starts to blend, all the years start to blend together. For quite some time, years ago, we met. She was the keynote speaker for the American Heart Association, and I was the MC. And the very next day had lunch, and we've been together ever since. The most important relationships in my life tend to start out that way. I meet somebody, then the very next day we're together forever. Same thing with my husband. One day, and the next I ask him on a date, and we've been together ever since. So I, in addition to doing public speaking, I also am a teacher of feng shui, and I do public speaking about feng shui. I work with corporations on understanding how the energetic matchup of their people works or how to make it better. Certainly with families also. And Mariel and I recognize that her approach to health and longevity married very beautifully with my approach to energy. So we began trying to stick our fingers in a bunch of different pots to try to understand what can we do together. We've melded together as two grown women, forming a friendship that neither one of us had ever had before, to this depth and this ease, incredible ease. It's very easy being Mariel's friend for me. And we discovered that our energies paralleled so beautifully that we had to discover something. And in addition to understanding the concept of energy and how it folds into and permeates throughout every aspect of your life, your food choices, your movement choices, your sleep, and so forth, we really saw the one area that kept rising, and I'll give credit where credit's due, in particular with Mariel, because of her incredible focus and participation in the mental wellness industry. The concept of energy and how it unfolds in that area with mental wellness was something that we knew we could address. So the concept of Mariel Hemingway Foundation really arose out of a need. The demand was greater than the supply, and people were really wanting to understand, where do I go? What do I do? regardless of location, I've had people say to me, insurance wouldn't help me with my son's mental illness.
Yeah.
Really?
I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know where to go. So Mariel and I began discovering this, or Mariel's known it for much longer than I. We decided that what we would do is create a Rolodex, if you will, a digital Rolodex. So regardless of where you're located, so if you're in Tokyo, you're in Fujisawa, you're in Austin, Texas, you can come to the Mariel Hemingway Foundation, and we will be able to give you options that are available within your reach, whether it's located in your area or it's an option to research and to dive into, such as health benefits or different modalities that are coming forward. So that's how she and I came together. And then out comes the Sun podcast. Was pretty organic because Mariel and I are both very fluid speakers. We don't necessarily need to take a pause. We're both very good at it. So when we got together, the ping pong of conversation, the back and forth was again so fluid. They were like, we ought to do this. We're both comfortable in front of the mic. Let's get out here. Let's share what we know. Let's interview really fascinating people. And all those people that we interview are typically part of our Mariel Hemingway Foundation resources. So that's and also I would be remiss to say, excuse me, that my husband is from Yokohama, Fujisawa area, and my son and daughter, Nobu and Seiji, are very much important parts of my life also. So thank you so much, Mike-san.
So your children have Japanese names?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My father was an interpreter for the American military and was stationed in Japan before he ever met my mother. So when I was growing up, my father would speak Japanese to me. I've always been enchanted with the culture, with the art, with the language, the history of Japan. So when I married my husband, I wasn't seeking a Japanese man, mind you. It just so happens life comes together. When I married him and we were talking about children, when I became pregnant with my daughter, we were trying to decide what names we would pick. And I was throwing out Japanese names, and he's looking at me quizzically because his name is Billy. He's thinking, why? Even his cousins in Japan have Americanized, anglicized names, right? So he was like, why are you wanting to? And I said, I'm enchanted by the romance of it. Now, transparency, my daughter's name is Seiji, and I know that that's a boy's name typically. But middle name is Anne. So my mother-in-law insists on calling her Seiji Anne. So, but my daughter is Seiji and my son is Nobu.
Well, that's really cool. So I think, we should talk about your charity first, I guess. So how did I know how the charity started, and I understand what is the purpose of the charity, but Mariel, how did you come up with this idea that you needed to make some kind of resource so that people could search?
Right. Well, here's the thing. I have spoken all over the country and Canada for mental health, different foundations and charities and agencies around the nation. And there's wonderful work being done, but it's very people don't know that these places exist sometimes. Certain areas are more successful with their stuff, but there's no one place to go that is sort of like a publisher's clearinghouse of information, right? Where you can plug in and go, here I think my daughter suffers from, depression or ADHD. And I would like to look at a holistic, service in my area. So now this is the dream because we just started the foundation quite recently, but the dream is to be able to plug in your area and then you get kind of this, web, a network of different solutions, whether it be holistic, lifestyle, or, pharmaceuticals, whatever is in tune with what you understand and what you believe to be your solution. And I really, so that's why, and well, that's not why. The reason why is because my family just suffered so much, and as creative and wonderful as they were, and I suffered depression for many, many years, and
Mhm.
I didn't know that I was depressed until I wasn't depressed anymore. And my solutions are they're very specific. They're very specific to me, but they're also they're very based in lifestyle choices, because I believe how you do everything affects the brain. So whether you're moving,
Mhm.
getting out in nature, eating good food, taking time to meditate or silence or prayer, whatever kind of resonates with you in that kind of space of finding inner peace. Um, and I said exercise, earthing. Earthing's been a big part of me feeling, balanced, because it gets rid of neuroinflammation. And earthing is when you take your shoes off and you walk barefoot on the ground, whether it's in a park, on a grassy park, or I often do a trail. I don't recommend it for the the people newly starting this, but getting rid of neuroinflammation is a big part of balancing the brain. So it's about understanding and giving people the number one, the education, and number two, the resources.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that Mariel's bringing up getting out into nature and the earthing. In Japan, we have forest bathing, right? So it's the using
Yes.
relationship to nature in order to relieve stress. So this is something that usually is very readily accepted and understood by people from Japan, because it's such a part of the culture, a very healthy part of the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, do you know that in Japan, this type of mental health support is very behind the United States, like 20 or 40 years behind?
Yes.
No, really?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The stigma of
Wow.
shame attached to it.
That's right.
So when there
Wow.
the stigma of for years, let me backtrack here for a second. For years, I know that I have a friend who is 104 now, so it's been quite a while. But his parents died when he was quite young.
Mhm.
Both of his parents died, and he was a foster child for a while. And trying to find a young girl who would love him, because he's an attractive, well adjusted, and very successful young man. But trying to find a family that felt comfortable enough for their daughter to marry him, because of the stigma of both parents, and that your parents, you were the line was, you were so bad your parents had to leave, we don't want our daughter with you. And so he had to fight against this cultural stigma forever. And he talked to me about how he said, I became very depressed, but even then I couldn't talk about that, because again, the shame that was attached to that. And Mike, we have in the nooks and crannies of America, no matter how much we may brag about how advanced we are, and we are very advanced, and I do applaud America for how much we have addressed the challenges of mental health. But even in the nooks and crannies of who we are, we still have a lot of stigma, and there's a lot of different cultural attachment to regardless of your culture, of talking about whatever your quote unquote Achilles heel is, wherever the weakness is, we build up the muscle around it and we run down the rabbit hole in talking about the actual issue. So Meryl and I recognize and realize the work that's cut out, but this is a challenge that's worthwhile. It's worth us fighting for.
It
Yeah.
is worthwhile. And here's the other reason why and sorry to kind of jump in here, but here's another reason why, is because when you think of my grandfather, for instance, Ernest Hemingway, one of the greatest writers in America for,
Yes.
the past century, this century, and probably many centuries to come. And his fame and creativity is applauded around the world, right?
Yeah.
And yet we don't want to kind of acknowledge that there was a tremendous amount of mental dis-ease, right? He was not, he suffered from depression. He also drank too much, which is a depressant also. But I tell the story as like, here was a great man. right? And there are so many great men, and I'm sure there are great men and women in Japan who are suffering, that are incredibly creative, incredibly successful, but that shame of not being able to say, this is, the truth of me is that I'm not always happy, and I don't know what to do. As bright and wonderful as I am, I don't know what to do when I go into the dark night of the soul. And I think it's just about saying, hey, we all have issues, all of us. And whether they're, even culturally, you don't want to admit the shame of that, but everybody has something that they're dealing with. Whether it's the loss of a pet, or then, or of a parent, or this and that, like loss and grief causes depression, postpartum depression from pregnancy and childbirth. So there's many different things that are kind of normal in life, but we don't want to accept them. We want to pretend like everybody's okay and our families are okay. And even though that's probably culturally more prevalent in Japan, it's still here as well. I mean, there's much more awareness, but when you get out of the big cities of LA and New York and kind of Chicago area, whatever, and you go into middle America, there's still that kind of stigma and shame and embarrassment. And, people don't want to see the mind as connected to the body. It's like, if somebody has a heart attack, you send them flowers and say, get well soon. But if somebody has something wrong with their brain, we just sort of think, oh my gosh, this is awful, and let's not talk about it. But, the body and the brain and the mind are connected, are interconnected. So it's about making that relationship and making it okay.
I want to tell you guys something that will probably blow your mind. So around, I think about 20 years ago, I got seriously clinically depressed, and I was so depressed that I could not leave my bedroom. And if the phone rang or someone knocked at the door, I just felt fear, and I felt this, it was like clouds in my stomach. I didn't know what to do. So I went to a Japanese psychiatrist or psychologist. I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 times, different psychologists. And they gave me a brand new drug. And that was a brand new drug 20 years ago. And I took it, and I didn't have any good, nothing good happened. I just felt terrible. And then finally my dad said, come back to the United States, and then I'm going to take you to a doctor. Took me to the doctor. I went to the doctor, talked to him for a few minutes, and he said, I think you need, X drug. I don't want to advertise the company, X drug. I took that drug for 4 days, and it was gone.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
it was just gone. No, I don't take it anymore. But
well, I'm a big believer that sometimes SSRIs, which are anyway, SSRIs, they're a great way to like give a break to the brain, right? It's kind of like putting a band-aid on something so you can figure out the solution. For you, it was the catalyst that just kind of switched it out, right? That's brilliant. And I'm what I really like about your story personally is that you took it for 4 days and you never had it again. You don't take it anymore. I love that story, but I hope that it also enabled you to look at your lifestyle and different things that you were doing, and maybe like, oh, I get outside more, or whatever. I think it makes you look at how you're living your life. Don't you think?
Yeah. And I stopped eating junk food. I don't eat junk food again, ever.
Huge. It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And people don't associate the food that they're eating with their brain health. And it's so obvious, like junk food, massive amounts of sugar. It's addictive, first of all. And secondly, it does cause inflammation in the body and the brain. And I love that you made that connection too, because nobody makes that connection, especially in the States, because they eat, fast food's even more, like horrendous here.
Yeah. I haven't eaten any sort of fast food in 20 years.
Nice. Yeah. Good job.
Yeah. I don't drink colas and just I try to eat almost all raw food if I can. Wow. I don't know if you guys know about the raw food diet. But
I know about everything.
Yeah,
about every diet there is.
So anyway, so that's really cool. So you're doing the Mariel Hemingway Foundation, is that what it's called?
Yes, the Mariel Hemingway Foundation. And then Melissa and I also have this podcast that we do called Out Comes the Sun. And the reason we called it Out Comes the Sun is that I wrote a book about my family and my legacy called Out Comes the Sun, or Out Came the Sun. So we named the podcast Out Comes the Sun. It's like, sun being such an important part of our brain health. I mean, yes. People don't realize that, like getting sunshine, getting sunrises and sunsets and the light in your eyes, it's huge.
So you're doing, you guys are doing Out Comes the Sun with my friend Jeremiah Higgins. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, we are. He is our executive producer. So yeah, he's amazing. We love him. I met him doing both Melissa and I met him doing a podcast of his. I was a guest on his show, and we had such an amazing connection.
I taught him everything he knows,
So he certainly loves you.
So Melissa, so you have to fight with Jeremiah, right? You're in charge of. You're like, he might be the executive producer, but you're the producer. You have to fight with him, right?
Well, Jeremiah is 5 years now, so I have a little bit of a older sister kind of mentality. I can although I do respect him tremendously, it's all in jest. That's one of the reasons why this works so well, is because it's such a symbiotic flow, and that's so vital to mental wellness. Is that you remove a lot of the obstruction, and there are some hurdles you'll have in life that you can't do anything about. It could be a job that you have to take, or it could be an in-law that you are forced to deal with, or even a blood relative that you're struggling with. But when you can make choices in your life to create this beautiful flow, why not? And so when Jeremiah and I get together, it is such a natural, easy flow. Why not?
Yeah, that's great. So wait, ladies, I'd like to do this interview in 2 parts. Okay.
Okay.
I heard a rumor that you have a new show or a new movie or something coming out. Is that true? Or
I have a movie that's out. I have a very small part in it called Sacred Ground. It's wonderful. It's about the whole Indian thing that happened with the pipeline in America. It's quite good. That's a small film, but then I'm also producing my grandfather's book, A Movable Feast, into a limited television series, and I'm doing another show about my sisters and myself from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which is, and then I've got another project that I can't really talk about, and then lots of stuff.
So I'd like to talk about that in part 2. Okay.
Okay.
So, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi. We'll see you back here tomorrow with part 2 of the Mike Rogers Show. If you like this video, go down here, click like and subscribe. It helps us with the algorithm. Anyways, Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll be adding applause into it so it sounds better.
I love it.